Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Something a bit different, not orchids. This is one of my other hobbies, bonsai. I haven't got many, and some of those I've got are not very good, but nonetheless they got neglected for probably 4 or 5 years, grew away untended and got out of shape, and it's a 2 to 3 year process to get them back in again. Now this one was repotted last spring, or maybe the spring before. You can tell I'm really keen on this hobby, can't you? It lives out in the garden, unfortunately, and most of the time the trees look after themselves, as long as it rains, otherwise I have to water them. But this is a Acer Palmatum Deshojo, and as you can see, the spring foliage is a brilliant red. It's absolutely stunning, and it keeps that red for a couple of months. It does tend to go a little bit of a dirty colour in midsummer, depending on how much sun. It starts to try and go green, but it has to get some sun on it. We lose the autumn colour, and the autumn colours are again absolutely stunning. Shades of yellows through reds and oranges, absolutely brilliant. But this is a nice tree to make into a bonsai because the leaves stay small, so it makes the tree look larger and older by having small leaves. Bonsais with large leaves don't work very well. They don't look right. They just look like a bush basically, even with training. So this one suffered in the heat wave badly. All I could do was basically try and keep it alive. So a hell of a lot of the time it just got water thrown on it. It didn't get much feed last year, so it hasn't grown as well as it could have done if we hadn't had that weather, but nonetheless it's done some growing. So we'll have a look at what was achieved and what failed during last year. This here is a sacrifice branch. That was left on deliberately to try and put some energy back into what was a failing branch and get some growth back into it. The idea is that by having a sacrifice branch, you allow it to grow long and silly with no intention of keeping it, but it draws the sap. Yeah, it draws the sap into the branch, and in this case has provided quite a lot of back budding, but that's coming off basically. Implements of torture. I've got my these are my old root pruning scissors from my orchid sort of stuff. I've got my secateurs because there's a couple of large branches I can see need to come off, and then the ones that probably won't get used are big stuff. This is a large branch cutter with handles that long and that amount of leverage. That will cut through a branch nearly 3/4 of an inch thick. I won't have any of those to take off, that's for sure. You can go out the way. This is a large knob cutter, this is called, and you can see the blades are curved. So what that allows you to do is cut into a trunk, yeah, and make a hollow, and then the bark will heal over that hollow. If you cut it straight, the bark will grow out round it and make quite a nasty looking callus. But with a cut like that, it can heal over and look quite natural. And that's a smaller version of the same thing. Yeah, that's a small knob cutter. I will need that in a minute. My claw is for repotting, you know, getting the media out of the roots and straightening the roots, getting them all to look nice. There's a slug there, we'll have him in a minute. Probably won't last long in here. And my plastic, not ivory, chopstick is for poking media down. We won't be needing that today. None of my bonsai are getting repotted. That's for playing about with wire should I need to do so. And this is Japanese cut paste. This seals wounds, a bit like we would use cinnamon in the orchids, but this stuff's quite special because it not only seals the wounds, it's got healing properties in it, and it's also got hormones in it that help the bark to grow round, yeah, rather than just die back away from a wound. So that's actually good stuff. What's in it is that. Don't ask me to read it, but I will maybe need a bit of that. And that's my little turntable, which if the bonsai was a lot smaller, it could sit on that and then I could spin it round on itself, yeah. But won't be needing that today because this is far too big and far too heavy. And the idea with putting it in or on that tray, because it won't fit in it, and putting the tray on newspaper is I can spin it, yeah, without scratching my glass tabletop, so I can turn it around. Now there is a big debate in my head going on with this tree, because the base of this tree from this side is not as good as the base of the tree from this side. The base of the tree, looking at it from this side, is actually quite attractive because it's got roots going off in all directions and it looks quite balanced. Unfortunately, the branch structure lends itself to that being the back of the tree, not the front. So it's a debate. Last year I went for the attractive roots being the front of the tree. This year I'm going to go for the branch structure, and I'm going to make this the front of the tree to look at, basically. So first thing to do is get that sacrifice branch off, and the next thing to do will be get all dead stuff off. That's first job. So we'll get that off there. It's not a very good cut. I'm going to go down a bit. That does take me one of my little growths off, but this branch is now growing, so I'll live with that. Right, any more big dead stuff? There's a big dead bit over here. That will be, hang on, if I turn this round I can show you what this knob cutter does, because this is an ideal case for it, providing it shows up obviously on the video because it's quite tight. So you take the branch off like that, so that's just dead wood. And then you use your knob cutter to cut it back and make it an indented cut. And you can keep nibbling at this, just keep nibbling it away until it's flush but hollow. And then the bark will heal over that. You're just taking the wood out of the centre of the wound to allow somewhere for the bark to go over the top. I'll go back round in a minute with the stuff, because once I get that on my fingers it's sticky and I'll be stuck with it because it's sticky. Right, so again, looking for dead stuff. Big stuff first so that I can use large cuts. That's died back to there. So that can go. That's dead, back to there. Some of this is winter dye back. It's not all as a consequence of the heat wave. That's gone there. And both of those. But that branch has just gone back to a nice little cluster of new growths, so that'll work well. That can come off there. And what have we got here? Am I going to push that back this year or leave it till next year? This is the debate, is the more growth there is on a branch, the more it will draw the sap. The more it draws the sap, the more it will grow. And it's trying to get a balance. This is a low branch, but it's quite a thin branch compared with some of the other low branches. The only way that's going to thicken up is to be allowed to grow and allowed to extend. So I think that's what I'm going to have to do. Just taking a few. Any crossing branches have to come off, because in the wind they'll only damage. So that's about it. I'm not going to do any more. Oh, there's another little dead bit at the end there. I'm not going to do any more on that branch. That branch is going to be allowed to grow. So all of these new growths, I would have loved to have got some back budding farther near back towards the trunk on this branch specifically, and that's the only one that didn't do it. Nuisance. Still, can't win them all. So that's all I'm going to do to that branch. Now this large branch that's facing us, this has got back budding, including a new branch right at the base that's pointing straight back from the branch at the trunk, so I can't leave that. It's pointing in totally the wrong direction. But I have got back budding in what were bare sections, so now I can let them go. So the only thing I'm going to do on this is take the long extensions off so that they'll go back to their first joint, and those will push on now. With a bonsai, there's no point in leaving a growth at this time of year that you don't want unless you're creating a sacrifice branch, in which case you might want to leave it. But basically this needs to come down flat, this branch. So anything sticking up too high or outwards in the wrong direction comes off, which should leave it a flatter look. And when you cut a maple, don't cut tight to the buds. If you cut tight to the buds, you often get a bit of dieback after a trim. Only a little bit. Sometimes it's as little as 1/8 of an inch, you know, a couple of millimeters. Sometimes it will be as much as 1/4 of an inch. Well, if you cut it tight to a growth and it dies back, you'll lose that growth. You know, so don't go too mad. Leave a little bit of a stump. Now these ones here are pointing back towards the trunk. So we take the left hand one off, leaving the right hand one, which will spread out that way. What about here? I've got 2 buds there and another one there, so you can come off. What have we got here? Same again, 2 buds farther back. That one I'll leave. That's a rather long extension there, but it's coming from that cluster. So we'll take that one back and leave that one a little bit longer to spread out. And again, this is where the gap's going to be, so anything pointing that way comes off. Yeah, that leaves, when you get a pair of shoots, which you get, you know, opposite sides, you can direct the growth and put the energy into the one you want to come this way and take the one that points that way off. The tree's screaming at the moment, thinking, that was one of my nice branches, I was going to grow that this year. Yeah, well, I want you to grow the other one, not that one. So that'll do for that branch. I'm not going to do any more to that. That can be allowed to grow. That is sticking up a bit. Now, I think that will level out now. That should make quite a nice layer. Once the leaves open up, oh, we've got a long one there, we don't want that. Missed one. Right. That's that branch done. Now moving round, we've got this flat one, which we've already done. Now we come round to the not very good one, the other side. And for this one to work, it needs to be balanced with this one. Now this one's grown quite well, and it will have a nice layer with a drooping effect on it. So that one's working quite well. This one has got back budding at long last, but not as much as I'd have liked. But I don't, no, I'm going to leave it. We won't take any off of that. Now this one here, loads of back budding. So all I've got to do with that is, as these extend, make sure they grow that way and not that way. So nothing gets allowed to point back to the trunk. But apart from that, it's a weak branch. So I can't take too much off of this. What I've got needs to be allowed to grow in the main. And always think about your overall shape. Your basic outline should be a triangle, but I always think of it with curved edges, so more like a dome. Yeah? And what you don't want is your secondary branches, your ones higher up, sticking out farther than the lowest branches. The lowest branches should have your width, and then gradually they get shorter. But with a maple you want a layering effect. It makes them look right. Makes them look ancient as well. So I can't do much with that branch apart from let the back budding grow. Back budding to grow there. Just a little bit of dead. Not a lot. See, I could leave that on. It's not going to do any good. Just as well come off while I can see it. Once the leaves open and the branches start extending, it's much more difficult to get the dead bits. So that can be allowed to go a bit. This branch is part of the apex and it's ugly, but I'm stuck with it. I don't want to take it off, it'll leave a hole in the apex, so I can't do that. It'll take too long to regrow. But what I have got is some back budding coming out of this part of the base of the branch. Yeah? So those are going to be allowed to grow, and if one of them really takes off, it might replace this one and come up anew. But this one, it's got some high spots on it, which I don't want. So we'll take the high spots back. This branch here is encroaching on this branch, so he'll have to go back. As I said, we're in the apex now, so we're after this sort of shape. We're not after dead flat and not too wide. Apart from that, that little branch isn't too bad. There's one long extension there, which can come off. That'll do. As I say, I'm not going mad with this one this spring. I want to get quite a lot to grow on this one. Now here, we have a serious problem. That branch has died practically back to the trunk. Now I've got choices. I do have some little back buds here, or I take it back to the trunk. If I take it back to the trunk, I will have nothing in this space at all. It will be empty and it will look wrong. So I'm totally reliant on those bits growing. And that bit has died right back to there, literally. And when I cut that, that will show dead wood. Just a tiny little bit of green. So we've got four growths here, which can now be allowed to grow. And hopefully they'll start to fill in this gap here, because that has left a gap taking that out, but there was nothing growing on it. Now we come to this little branch, which again is part of the apex, so it needs to form a dome. Now, I'd like this tree to be a little taller, so some of these parts are going to be allowed to push upwards. But to get them to push upwards, I've got to take the sideways bits off, leaving the bits that point upwards. There's only one long, yeah, that long extension is going to be allowed to stay. That one needs to come off though. It's funny, you look at a tree from a different angle and you see a bit you totally miss. That's going to be allowed to stay as it is. Right. Now we move round here. Like my little man, he's a little Japanese guy sat holding a scroll, I think that is. It might be his, oh, it's got holes in it. It's probably his wooden flute he's holding with his little beard. I was given that. And he, I don't know, I just like him sat under the tree. Doesn't do any harm, does it? Right, here we've got dead bits all over the place. There's no point in leaving them, they need to come off, or they'll spoil the look of the tree eventually. Right, come off there. A little bit tidier. That's better. Just remember where these cuts are. I'll have to go back round with the cut paste in a minute. So that bit, there's not much I can do with that. I've got new growths back here, here and here, and here. So they'll make this branch spread a little because it's a bit far away from the tree. But as you can see here, this is my extremities on my lowest branch, and this one's encroaching it. So this one's got to be pushed back, just to keep its shape while it's got some new growths to work with, and it will put the energy into those new growths then. We just take that back, and then these new growths can be allowed to grow. Don't like that, but then when I get all this dead stuff off of here, that will that might come into its own. Right, how bad is this? Well, that's gone completely, so you can come off. It's dead. This bit is dead as well, but there's a little tiny new growth there which I don't want to chop off, so we'll go back to there. It's that bit. This was the worst hit branch, this one. This is bad. All of this is dead, right back to that tiny little growth there. I'm debating whether to even keep this branch, but if I take it off, it'll leave a gap. So we'll just take the dead bits off for now and then see what it does. It's just a matter of seeing where the new growths push and which ones push out stronger than others. And this one is not an apex grower as such. Some trees will put all their energy up into the top of the tree, and you've got a hell of a job trying to maintain the lower branches. But this particular maple evens itself out quite nicely, so some energy does go into the lower branches. Right, nice big fat dead bit up there, you can come off. This is a very ugly stump here, very ugly. It's got a dead straight bit here, which is not very nice, and this big ugly bit here. But it does have some growths near this bit, so in the winter it will never look much good because that's ugly. But once these new growths farther back start pushing out, this area will have some leaves on it and it won't show, it won't look quite so bad. Now that is my highest point there. It's also a weak branch, another bit of dead there. Right, what do I do with this? Do I push it back? I've got plenty of new growths behind that point, so I'm going to take that extension off. Otherwise the energy will go into it and I don't want that. This is still a bit high, but I need to draw some sap. I'll have to leave it for now. That might be a future trim. So right, that's the only one needs dealing with now, which is that one, and then hopefully we can push that back with the big one. Oh, that's better. Oh, that'll callus over a lot nicer. Right, all that's left to do now for this one really is just get some of this cut paste on the wounds. Only needs to be done on the big ones. It's just literally like putty. It's strange stuff, but it really does the job. It seals them, makes them waterproof for a start, so you don't get any rot setting in. It's got fungicides built into it. It's got all sorts. It's clever stuff basically, and as I say, it's got hormones in it to encourage the bark to callus over the wounds rather than dying back. So it does work. It's pretty good stuff. I've got a clue what's in it, as I said. And I can't read Japanese, so I have no way of finding out. That was a bad cut. That was a bad cut. Let me trim it so I can get it a bit better. That's better. It was just a scrappy wound, with jagged edges. They're much better if they're clean. Much, much better. Nice clean wounds. So have I missed any around this side? Any big ones? No, I think we're okay around this side. Let's get this stuff out of the way, move around a bit, see what else we got. The main one was that big one on the trunk. So, on the trunk it will look much nicer if it calluses over. And again there. Anything else? We've got that one there. That's just dead wood. It's hardly worth putting any on dead wood. Chances the bark growing there are pretty slim, aren't they? How are we now? Oh, I just missed another big dead bit. Oh, good job to get at that bit. Just trim that back in line with the branch. Better. Right, any other big ones? That one there. If it wasn't so sticky, I'd do these as I cut them, then I wouldn't forget them, would I? But it gets on your fingers, and then it gets on your tools and on the handles, and it normally generates a bit of language at that point, because it really is sticky stuff. As I say, it's like sticky putty. And that's going to do. That's going to do for that one. Right, now all I've got to do is watch out for what will become this year's sacrifice branches, and I need a couple on this branch because it's weak. This one's now okay. This one can just be allowed to layer up nicely, and it's got a couple of shoots farther back which will make that even more dense, so they can be allowed to grow. This needs to be allowed to grow, and I'm hoping to get a sacrifice branch up here which will put energy into the bits farther back. Then it can be brought back a bit. This is a hopeless branch at the moment, but I've got stacks of new growth all over the place. I'm hoping one or two of these here will take off, and then that'll draw the sap into this area and hopefully get some more back budding going. This branch here needs to grow. It needs to fill this space. So I need something there. This one needs to strengthen up. The ones that form the apex are not too bad. They were, but they didn't grow too bad last year despite the heat wave. Just about managed to hang on to this tree. So that's it. That's a spring tree trim on what is a mature tree. I don't know how old this tree is because I know somebody's going to ask. I think it's probably about 35 or 40 years old, this tree. But with a bonsai, if somebody asks you how old your tree is, you should always put the question back and say, how old does it look? And the goal is to get it to look like an ancient tree that's been around forever. Yeah. Anyway, that's that one done. Something a bit different, as I said. I've got some others to do, but I'm not going to do them all at once. And I've got two out there that won't get anything done to them this year. They won't get trimmed at all. They're going to be allowed to grow on and develop some height and some width. But this one, if I let this one do that, I'll be in the same boat as I was 2 years ago when I started looking at it. I'll be forever forcing it back into the middle. Yeah, I'm getting there. As I said, the back budding and the new growth giving me choices is a lot better now than I expected it to be, because most of those new growths there in that heat wave looked as though they'd died. Well, they haven't. They've shot out now as spring comes. So I'm going to go and clean my finger now. See you next time.